Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Look, we all know the standard intermittent fasting pitch, right? Just restrict your eating window and watch the fat melt off. Simple. But honestly, there's a pretty massive gap between that kind of hype and actual biological reality. So today we're going to explore the hidden realities that you absolutely must know before you start, mostly just so you don't accidentally set yourself up for failure.
So why do most people quit fasting in week 2? Because it is incredibly common. People start with this massive burst of enthusiasm on a Monday, and then by the following Thursday, they are completely throwing in the towel. And it's really not because they lack willpower, it's actually because of these early physiological pitfalls that literally nobody warns them about. They hit this wall, they think the process is failing them, and so they just quit. Well, we're gonna explore exactly how to fix that. Okay, let's just quickly outline our roadmap for today's explainer. We're gonna hit surviving week 1, the calorie trap, hormones and fasting, the electrolyte fix, and finally, the real win. All right, moving right into part 1, surviving week 1 and the easy myth. So the first major hurdle of intermittent fasting is this literal physical panic that your body goes through in those first 7 days. Think about your body's standard operating procedure right now. Constant sugar spikes. Thanks to modern eating habits, we're basically feeding ourselves every 3 hours or so. A quick snack here, a latte there. Your body gets incredibly used to running on this readily available, super constant stream of sugar. But when you start fasting, you are completely cutting that supply line off. Suddenly, you stop feeding your body every few hours, and honestly, it panics a little bit. It's forced to make this drastic shift, basically switching its primary fuel source from that really easy sugar over to burning stored fat. And let me tell you, that biological transition is not a smooth or quiet process. Because of that sudden internal panic, you are absolutely going to experience some very real, very frustrating symptoms. You're likely going to feel a wave of irritability. You might experience some severe brain fog where you literally just can't seem to focus on your work. And you'll probably get some pretty stubborn headaches too. But here is the absolutely crucial thing you need to know. This is not a sign that fasting is bad for you, and it's certainly not a sign that the process is failing. It's actually the exact opposite. This temporary discomfort, that is the precise moment your body is finally making that metabolic switch. Most people quit right here, completely unaware that they are stopping right in the exact window where the amazing biological results are literally just about to begin. Okay, let's look at part 2, the calorie trap, and why fasting is not a free pass. So once you actually make it past that brutal first week, you tend to hit the absolute most common dietary mistake beginners make. Here's the truth. Fasting controls when you eat. It does absolutely nothing about how much you eat. Intermittent fasting is not some kind of magical free pass to just eat whatever you want in whatever massive quantities you want simply because you're doing it in a restricted window. Honestly, so many beginners break their hard-earned fast with an absolutely massive meal. They mentally justify it, right? They tell themselves, well, I only ate for 6 hours today, so I'm totally fine. And then a few weeks later, they're standing on the scale wondering why the numbers aren't moving at all. Look, if you remain in a calorie surplus, meaning you're consuming more energy than your body is burning, even if you cram all of those calories into a tiny little eating window, you are not going to lose weight. You just cannot bypass basic biology. That brings us to part 3, hormones and fasting and taking a targeted approach. We really need to talk about the fact that fasting does not impact everyone's biology in the exact same way. And women especially need to hear this reality. Fasting impacts hormones very, very differently based on your specific body and your current lifestyle. Jumping straight into these really long or highly aggressive fasting windows can actually disrupt your biological balance rather than help it. For some women, especially if this new fasting routine is combined with high life stress or severely low calories, the practice can actually lead to disrupted menstrual cycles, chronically lower daytime energy, and significantly poor sleep at night. Now, I want to be perfectly clear here. This absolutely does not mean that fasting is bad for women. Not at all. What it does mean, though, is that the approach just has to be adjusted. So the crucial point here is that you absolutely must start gentle. Step 1 is simply starting with a 12-hour fasting window and a 12-hour eating window. That is a very natural, easy rhythm for the human body. Then, once your body really adapts to that, you can move on to step 2, which is a 14-hour fast with a 10-hour eating window. What you really want to avoid is step 3, jumping straight into a rigid 18-hour fast and a tiny 6-hour eating window right out of the gate. Progressively building up your fasting windows gives your endocrine system the time it desperately needs to adapt, and it safely protects your delicate hormonal balance. All right, moving on to part 4, the electrolyte fix, our secret remedy. You know that physical misery and fatigue we talked about back in week 1? Well, it's actually usually not actual hunger at all. The real culprit is something called the insulin drop effect. So here's the biological reality of what's happening inside your bloodstream. When you stop eating constantly, your insulin levels naturally and wonderfully begin to fall. But when insulin falls during a fast, it triggers your kidneys to rapidly release excess sodium and water from your body. You are literally flushing out your vital minerals. This rapid, sudden loss of sodium and water is the actual biological reason for the physical misery of those first 2 weeks. It is not a lack of food causing that headache, it's a lack of electrolytes. But luckily for us, the fix for this is incredibly simple. To replace what the insulin drop effect is flushing out, you really just need a couple of basic household items. A simple pinch of high-quality salt dissolved in a glass of water, or just a cup of plain black coffee, can rapidly supply those missing electrolytes right back into your system. Seriously, implementing this one tiny habit can instantly be the difference between absolute misery and total ease during your fast. It's a total game changer. Let's wrap things up with part 5, the real win, and looking beyond just weight loss. The most profound benefit of sticking out those challenging early stages goes so far beyond just seeing weight loss on a scale. It's actually a core psychological shift. The biggest thing nobody tells beginners is that fasting fundamentally teaches you a brand new skill, the ability to distinguish actual physical hunger from just boredom eating. Most of us eat because the clock says it's noon, or because we're stressed out, or simply because we're bored. We have completely lost touch with what actual biological hunger even feels like. Intermittent fasting acts as this giant reset button. It forces you to sit with yourself and truly learn to recognize your body's true signals. It draws a massive, clear line between physiological necessity and just pure emotional habit. So, to bring all of this together, here are your core actionable takeaways if you're ready to start experimenting with your fasting windows. Number 1, start slow. Do not rush into aggressive restrictions. Let your hormones adapt naturally. Number 2, stay hydrated and keep those electrolytes up with a little bit of salt to fight off that insulin drop effect. And number 3, whatever you do, don't panic in week 1. Remember that the brain fog and irritability, those are simply the sounds of your body successfully switching its engines from sugar over to fat. I want to leave you with this final, kind of provocative thought. When you master intermittent fasting, you aren't just adopting some temporary diet. You are mastering a skill. And that skill alone completely changes your entire relationship with food, long after any diet phase ends. It really begs the ultimate question you have to ask yourself. Who is actually in control of your daily life? Is it you, or is it the food? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep experimenting, and I'll catch you next time.